Good morning, everyone. Today is episode number 24. You've got Monty and myself. Today we're going to be talking about what is Bitcoin and really kind of diving deep into an information overview of Bitcoin, the blockchain, kind of what you need to know to be informed about Bitcoin. Hey, Monty, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How you been?
Good. It's amazing. Things have been transitioning. We just previous from the show, we're talking about that Florida shooting and security.
Exactly.
Everywhere we turn, there's something going on with security.
Yeah, on some level, the world is changing. You know, we're countering threats in the physical world, and then over in the cyberspace, we're finding that it's a never-ending arms race. So we definitely have to keep on top of things in both areas, and then there seems to be merging. But what do you think about the idea that there's a whole lot of overlap nowadays between both of these areas?
I mean, what we have to look at, and this is the thing we talked about, security is not just one domain. It's not just one area.
Oh, okay, right, exactly.
It's not just like your computers is one security, and that's all you need to do, and your physical security is something different. It's all intertwined, especially when you got companies like we're talking about the club in Florida that had that shooting a few weeks back. What happened was, they had a physical security breach, and the guy came in and he shot people, and it was a horrific situation. But you look at, could there be systems in place? Could there be technology in place? Could be there tracking to, could there have been someone doing investigation, catching, because the guy probably did some sort of pre-investigation prior to going to that club, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what they're finding. I think that he was literally scouting around. And as we mentioned earlier, it looks like Disneyland was near the top of the list as a good candidate. And thank goodness he didn't end up there. But it looks like definitely that was supposed to be one of the targets.
So that what you're saying is he was doing research and looking at potential targets?
Yeah, exactly. This wasn't just some situation, according to what I understand, unless the reporting was inaccurate. But it looks like he was doing his best to figure out, exactly where he was going to be trying to cause disruption.
Yeah, and this is what I'm saying. Like when we look at security, and this is why we talk about the alphabet. The FBI, the CIA, the NSA. They're understaffed right now to be able to monitor key words that come up and flag them to be able to say, well, this is someone we need to do a little bit further investigation. And they have the systems that do this right now. It's just like, how can you filter through the millions and millions and billions and trillions of data that's out there that are being flagged to be able to say, we need to investigate this person, and how do you escalate that? So I think what happens is, we're kind of going back to what the initial question is, I think the security right now is so integrated with technology, physical, your surroundings, that we have to look at, being mindful, educating ourselves, right? And having the systems in place and supporting them. Like we're talking about big companies, organizations, law enforcement, having them supported that they're able to do their job, right? Because sometimes they're underpowered, where I've heard this, where there's what we'll say is I'm trying to think of the term, but it's guys that are so, I'm going to say, inept, very dumb, that they're tweeting and they're posting as they're doing a crime. Right? They're like, look, I'm at Walmart, I'm stealing this thing, or I just robbed the store.
Right.
And these people, because they're doing this, can get caught a lot easier now with the forensics and the information, because now they're caught literally red-handed, that in the act, at the time, geolocation, everything's there now, and he's actually saying that they did it.
right. Yeah, every once in a while, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. When you have indisputable proof like that, and people basically, as you mentioned, when you're using smart devices that have all this technology built into it, the devices by themselves can pretty much make the case that the law enforcement needs to make for us. So that's good news when everything is working properly. The bad news is they're very smart, intelligent individuals, the ones that are aware of the fact that they need to mask the geolocation capabilities and that they need to make sure that there is no forensic fingerprint that's where we can retrieve it easily.
Right.
That those are the complicated situations, and that takes time and that takes effort.
And they're not the Darwin, and that's the term I was looking. They're not the Darwin type people where they're stupid enough to make mistakes in that realm. They're what we consider as the more educated criminal, where they're doing their due diligence, doing that. And now, don't get me wrong, we're not recommending or advising anyone to go do any crimes.
Exactly.
We're just saying, like, when it comes to technology and then supporting the law enforcement, they need more support to be able to have the staff, have the team, have the technology behind them to be able to investigate it further, because they're understaffed, right? When it comes to them, and they don't have the background, education, or knowledge to be able to do it, because, again, as we know, there's trillions of bytes of data that are out there that they can't sift through. They just don't have the time.
No, I'm reading more. I guess the good news is I'm reading more and more about machine learning, when it comes to analyzing information.
So, like artificial intelligence?
Yeah, basically along the same lines. If I can get a computer to sift through data and see, typically this is the way that works. A computer is able to go through much more information. In other words, the more information that I put into it, the better it's able to spit out some correlations in terms of individuals showing up, when they show up, what are they doing, various activities. If they can be analyzed by computers that have millions and millions and millions of data points that it's trying to connect, then that may be more proficient as compared to, for instance, having a security guard who's taking a look at individuals as they come into or leave out of buildings. Mm-hmm. He or she may not be able to correlate all of this information and come to some sort of conclusion as compared to a small number of cameras that are analyzing and sifting through and comparing information and sifting through millions of bits of data to make those correlations and assumptions. So,
which, as we know, it's going to take time. I mean, when we look at artificial intelligence, because there's so many factors. I mean, at the end of the day, there's also the human element. Someone might look, because they're standing a certain way, they're in a certain direction, they're a certain height. The computer might say, that's a person that's ranks as a criminal, or is going to do a criminal act, because of all these factors that they try to
exactly.
And what happens is there's also the human element where we have to kind of go and decipher that, you know what? No, they're not. They're just doing this one thing. It might look awkward. It might look bad, but he's not really doing something. He always sifting. And I'll give you an example. Like, say, for example, myself and a young lady were out at a mall, all right? And she walked off and left her purse. Well, we're together and I look like I reached into her purse to get something. Well, that might look like I'm stealing something. But the cameras might analyze that now that's a crime.
Oh, sure.
Meanwhile, that's my girlfriend, my wife, whatever, my significant other, she might have my cell phone in her bag, in her purse.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I mean. There's going to take time to understand that human element, right, of deciphering all the data points to be able to say truly what is and what isn't a crime, what should be investigated, what shouldn't. And it's just going to take time.
Yeah, I think we're at the beginning, the very beginning stages in terms of making sure that we take advantage of what's quote unquote big data and the advantages that it has to offer, so that we can, as you mentioned, not only analyze the data but maybe exercise our intuition, our ability to take a look at whether or not there's anything any input that we can provide that's going to make more sense.
Right.
Because we don't know how to program into computers and such the ability to make ethical and moral decisions, for instance. And so that's going to be another area. And if you can figure out how to do that, you're going to make a lot of money real soon. So yeah, we're that's definitely something that needs to be looked at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about crimes, we're kind of going that route. Let's talk about the financial industry. I mean, something that we've heard about is compromises with credit cards, people's identity, the banks getting compromised, and through the years, I mean, that was our sole, institution that looked
Right.
after our money. I mean,
Exactly.
It was whatever big banks was there, they were the ones that we stored our money, we did our investments through, we had our checkings, we had our savings, we had our mortgage, we did everything through. Now, since, the evolution of different systems out there, one that we're talking about today, Bitcoin, I feel it's changing the financial industry. Now, to ask you, Monty, because I mean, this is more your space than mine. What is Bitcoin? Like in layman's terms, for someone that might be just kind of popping here, has no clue, how would you define what Bitcoin is?
Well, on the most basic level, I would say, let's look at Bitcoin as another type of dollar, another type of currency. Okay, right now, see, we live in a world where we actually have remnants of physical currency. Right, you can actually walk around with money in your pocket that becomes in the form of coins, and even in some of our wallets, we still have bills. We have this paper. But for the most part,
do you know the history from that?
You can refresh it. I've stated a lot, and I don't know. I could probably stand to get a review or a refresher.
So what happened? The reason why currency was created was because of trade.
Right.
What happens in trade is I would do something for you, and you would do something for me. So I'd write on a note, I have an IOU. So
right, exactly.
You do one thing for me. I might not have something to trade, but I would owe you. So then it came to a sense that we started to come up with currency, which was considered the gold standard. So for every dollar, you'd have a gold standard that it would rank against. Exactly. So that would happen was at any point in the bank, you had a gold standard that you could be able to withdraw that money, that currency, against a certain standard. Well, since technology has evolved, the gold standard now has gone away because now we're on to bits and bytes. Right, where now it's all digital. There's no gold standard because foreign bank, if you didn't have a certain amount of gold in your bank, you couldn't give out a certain amount of currency. So right. That's where we look at currency and the money kind of situation or standard came out. Is that it first came out from IOUs, us doing trade and bartering, and then it evolved to a gold standard where there had to be something to equate against. So if you had a certain amount of money in currency, it had to relate to a certain amount in gold. If it didn't, it wasn't valid.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Initially, see, we had to have a way of record keeping. We couldn't trade back and forth. We couldn't understand what I owed you or you owed me or something if there was no record keeping system. So going back 1,000 years with sticks, for instance, I think one of the original concepts was probably sticks, according to what I understand. There was some cultures who literally notched markings and sticks, and then they broke it. And if you had the opposite piece of this stick, for instance, that means that we had an open transaction, and that when we concluded that transaction, and when I paid my debt, for instance, I got a chance to match that piece with my piece, and that meant that transaction was concluded. So at the very, very earliest inceptions, we had to have a way of verifying that one, transactions took place, and then two, when they were concluded or paid off, or that was paid off, for instance, we put these things together, and then that meant that okay, now Brandon and Monty's transaction, for instance, is all done and it's concluded. So getting back to the idea that we live in a world already where we have the remnants of what's left over from that physical with the paper and the metals and with the coins and such that we keep in our wallets. But for the most part, you see a lot of people who really can go throughout the day, for instance, run errands, pay bills, do shopping with electronic credits and debits, right? So it's not a big secret that we actually live in a digital currency based economic system already, and Bitcoin takes that concept basically and puts it online and makes it so that this is the foundation now. It's almost like a society going from leapfrogging wired technology. For instance, in the United States, we had a wired telephone system for a long, long time. And the calls literally traveled on a wire from place to place. But in some emerging or developing countries, they actually got a chance to leapfrog that, right? Because they got cell phones. So this is what's happening in the digital currency space. The generations coming up aren't going to handle any physical currency at all. They'll be going through most of their lives, using cell phones, for instance, and barcodes or whatever to transfer, move money around back and forth. So yeah, Bitcoin basically takes that concept, puts it on steroids, and makes absolutely sure that this digital currency is the de facto way of doing payments, exchanging value, accounting for value. And Brandon was making a reference to some of the issues related to why it's important to understand this concept, because a lot of times when you talk about Bitcoin, you got to talk about why is it important, and that has more to do with why we have a problem, right? If we didn't have a problem, we probably wouldn't have Bitcoin.
Well, let's go into this. I mean, and one of the things as Bitcoin, and I was just looking this up, kind of get again a little bit of a definition here.
Right.
It's a type of digital currency in which encryption techniques are used to regulate the generation of units of currency and verify the transfer of funds, operating independent of a central bank. Exactly. That's why it's important, because that's why I was bringing up the history here. It's because the history of banks was to monitor the gold standard, and then when it went to a digital standard, I think it opened the door for this type of currency to come into the market.
Yeah, if we would have left it up to the central bankers, they would have literally made absolutely sure that not only do you go off the gold standard, but you have no accountability, because see, when you have a unit of value, whether it's gold, silver, or whatever you have, it has a certain amount of intrinsic value, so that we know that there's something underlying it, supporting it, and it's going to make it actually have value, consistent value when we're trading back and forth. And see, right now we have a problem with that. The dollar actually, since it left the gold standard, I think under the Nixon administration with Bretton Woods, they determined a long, long time ago that they were going to take it off any standard, so that it's not backed by anything. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. And see, that's well and good, but at the same time, that doesn't allow us to understand whether or not we're over printing, for instance, or whether or not we have this dilution effect. When you create too much of something, and me and Brandon are holding dollars or the Canadian currency or whatever it is, if you print too much of it, for instance, is what happens with central bankers in an effort to stimulate the economy or whatever they're trying to do, it causes a dilution, a dilutive effect, and our money becomes less valuable. So what happens is, when we go to the store, when we buy gas, when we do certain things, we have less value. We need more money now. So this is one of the major problems associated with what we call fiat currency. So that's why this particular person, Satoshi Nakamoto, when he came on board with this concept, then now we finally get to the point where we can have a currency that has a certain way of being accounted for. In other words, you can't just print out as much as you want, depending upon whether or not there's a war, depending upon whether or not there's some budgetary issues going on with the government or something like that. There's a certain amount that's going to be available, and it's accounted for, and duplicating it and counterfeiting. All these things go out the window when it's a mathematical concept that you use to account for them.
Well, you also look at, I mean, one of the levels, and hopefully this is something that is looked into, is encryption.
Right.
When you can add now encryption to it, your counterfeiting is a lot harder, right? It's not saying it's impossible, but the level of security now increases.
Exactly. And as we mentioned in another blab, we talked about the strength of the encryption algorithm, and a lot of times, see, we rate how strong or how difficult encryption can be when we can rate it in terms of, you know, millions or thousands or millions of man hours or man years or something. And right now, the underlying algorithm that makes Bitcoin such a viable candidate to compete against major currencies is that it's encryption, and it means that now we can trust and we can feel comfortable with the idea of sending this currency back and forth all over the planet without someone hacking into it and intercepting or stealing our money, because of the complexity. And it's been determined that there would take millions and millions of man hours, or man years rather, and all of the available supercomputers on the planet to break the algorithms.
So let me ask you this, Monty. I mean, we're going over a lot of kind of the foundation
Sure.
and the structure,
Right.
But how does it work? Like, how does it work for me as just a user? Again, I go to my bank right now and I can go and ask them for money. They give me, you know, the currency, like you said. They give me, you know, $100, $1,000, whatever that may be. Or I can use my debit card and I go to stores and I can swipe and pay for any product or service that I need. How does it work now with Bitcoin? How do I get Bitcoins? How do I use it? How do I sign up for it?
Okay, what a lot of people are doing in the Bitcoin space right now, particularly novices, you acquire Bitcoins usually in basically two different methods. There's like a whole host of different ways of acquiring it, but usually someone who has Bitcoin, like myself, will send out Bitcoin fractions thereof to people, right?
Okay.
So one method might be to get someone to send you some, and it goes from their account, just like a PayPal transfer, from one account to the other. And now you have a wallet that this Bitcoin goes into, and it's literally sitting there representing the amount of Bitcoin that you hold, right? And that wallet is actually going to make absolutely sure that, just like PayPal, again, when you go shopping to the various sites, and now there's a whole host of sites where you can go and actually buy products and services. Okay, for instance, there's a company called Coinbase, 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 that I use, and Coinbase is basically a place where they not only will help you store and safeguard your Bitcoin like a real safe deposit box, but you could actually set up your PayPal account, your Visa, your different types of cards, so that you can quickly buy and sell Bitcoin and either leave it with them because right now they have various tiers of security for your short-term, medium, and long-term storage of your Bitcoin. So if you want, like I did, you put the amount of money that you don't want to have exposed to any risk at all. You put that in a vault, and that's stored and offline, for instance. And if you ever need to get access to that, then there's a few steps you got to go through, but that's highly secure. Then you have the lower levels where you can have liquid cash, for instance, the equivalent of liquid cash, so that if you ever want to go shopping, you get it from there. So there's Coinbase and there's BitPay, BITPAY. BitPay, these are right now the first and second leaders in this space of what are known as payment systems and storage places where you can either store or in the case of BitPay, it's basically a vehicle where you don't necessarily store Bitcoin there, but you use it when you want to quickly buy and sell, almost the equivalent of like an exchange.
And that's bitpay.com.
Yeah, exactly. BITPAY, BitPay, right? Those are the market leaders, as far as I know. I've been dealing with those guys for a long, long time, and I've integrated both of them actually into my shopping cart a long, long time ago, so that customers who go to my website and want to use Bitcoins to purchase products as they have, they can use BitPay, or they can use Coinbase, and that money goes into our respective accounts depending upon which one they use. Everybody has their preferences, but yeah, it all depends on which one you want to use.
So let's take a step back. So
Sure.
now I'm a user. I go to Coinbase. I'm saying, okay, you know what? I want to buy some Bitcoin. So I go and I buy some Bitcoin by either one or two methods. I transfer money into Bitcoin. I use my Visa and buy Bitcoin. So now I have this currency. That's what you're saying. I have this available currency that I can use that's called Bitcoin.
Right.
So now, how do I use it in my shopping? Like I understand online if stores accept it now, like you're saying with PayPal, that there's going to be a shopping cart and some sort of transaction where you put your username and password and that goes through. But what if I'm going shopping at the grocery store?
Well, yeah, there's good news, because 4 years ago, it was very difficult to find, as many merchants where you could actually use your Bitcoin and buy groceries and pizzas and clothing or whatever it is. But there's directories. I have to see if I can find one of the blogs that I put together where there's directory, or you can Google it if you want. But now there's directories where every time a merchant, enables Bitcoin for their business, they can actually sign on with this directory and let the whole world know that we're part of this group now.
So they go into this kind of database, right?
Yes, yeah, it goes into a database, and one company is going so far as to actually put all this online. So when you go to their website, depending upon, for instance, whether or not you have the GPS thing on your browser, the location thing that tells you where you are in respect to the nearest merchants that offer Bitcoin. And then there's probably also apps, so that if you want to find, merchants through an app, like finding ATM machines with your local bank when you travel, it's basically the same concept. You may want to put in their local Bitcoins. What is it called? Let me see. I think it's called local Bitcoins. That's a peer-to-peer network of a bunch of individuals who have taken it upon themselves to actually allow you to travel all over the place, and they network with each other, and you can literally meet someone and exchange Bitcoins, almost like in a Craigslist environment where you're trading directly back and forth between individuals. So there's a number of resources available, definitely, now.
So I put that in the actual message, the chat, and it will also be in the videos that for the aftermath. If people are looking for on YouTube like that, I've actually put it there as well. So it's localbitcoins.com. Yeah,
exactly. And before I forget, another resource is called Gift. And I like Gift because GYFT.com. When you go to gift.com, for instance, what's going to happen is you're going to link. When you set up your account there, you're going to link it with your Coinbase, for instance, or your BitPay account, or some account where there's Bitcoin, right? And what they're going to do is, because they got a huge directory of merchants. They got they have the Kohl's and the 200 or 300 restaurants, and they have the Targets and the Amazons. And what I've been doing, which is kind of neat, is occasionally I would take some Bitcoins, transfer it onto a gift card, register or connect that gift card with Amazon directly. So now I can go onto Amazon, and long as I'm shopping on Amazon, I can choose to use that money that was previously in the form of the Bitcoin. Now it's on a gift card. Now I can go shopping on Amazon and buy whatever I want without dealing with any fiat currency at all.
Right.
So yeah, what really was really interesting is sometimes Bitcoins will go up and significantly go up in value, right?
Right.
And you get this wealth effect. And what happens is a lot of times you see a spike in activity in the Bitcoin space where everybody's going out and and you know the people, you got the Ferraris that are being purchased, you got the houses, you got all these things, and it's a direct correlation between the increase in price on the Bitcoin and a number of and the shopping activity as far as people, the affluence that you know it's almost like the affluent people are now feeling more comfortable. Same thing like in the housing space when you got when a real estate is appreciating in value considerably, everyone feels like they're more wealthy, and you get people taking out home equity loans or whatever, and they're buying boats and cars and doing home improvement
Right.
or whatever. Same thing in the Bitcoin space. When it goes up in value, now all of a sudden there's like a lot of economic activity associated with people trying to spend some of the profits,
Right.
for instance. Right.
So now we kind of have a base of how it kind of works as a consumer, like you talked about on the business side, that businesses are signing up for it and using this. How secure is it? How secure is Bitcoin compared to using my standard bank, you know, the big central banks?
Okay, well, I'll tell you this. Bitcoin, we talked about bounties for you being able to break in to my database if I'm a bank or a corporation, right?
Right.
If I want to know whether or not I'm really secure, I'll pay you to break into my network, right?
Right.
Well, in the Bitcoin space, this is what's happening. A lot of people are we're overall we're so confident that this is secure technology that see Bitcoin, the overall value, the capitalization of Bitcoin right now, all of the Bitcoins out there, it's worth about $10 billion. So that's theoretically the bounty that Brandon can walk away with if he is a very good hacker and he's confident that he can actually break in or hack into or compromise and steal the Bitcoins, right?
Right.
So this is a reward that actually you are entitled to if you're good enough to prove that there's a problem. And now with the Bitcoin price being roughly 639, 640, the market cap of Bitcoin is actually $10 billion. Okay. If you go to coindesk.com, that's an information resource that I want everybody to become familiar with, because at coindesk.com, that's an information and resource place where you can find out all of the latest breaking news as far as what corporate America is doing in the Bitcoin space with blockchain and what governments all around the world are doing as far as implementing Bitcoin and blockchain technologies into their operations. And it seems like everyone is studying it. No one wants to be left behind because they feel like this is going to be the next thing that's definitely going to revolutionize the way payment systems work, the way transfer of ownership works, as far as people putting contracts online, people noting that I got married, people noting that I bought a house. All of this is going to be permanently stored in this digital ledger that is blockchain. But getting back to the main thing is there's a $10 billion pot of gold sitting there, and if you're a good hacker, you think you're really good, that's what you get if you can get access to it. So right now, Bitcoin is actually about 6 years old, almost 7, I think. Okay. And no one has succeeded in compromising it. So we're very secure in knowing that the algorithms and the encryption mechanisms and schemes and such are definitely not going to be compromised anytime soon.
Now, wasn't Bitcoin just hacked just recently?
Well, it's not Bitcoin itself. Unfortunately, what happens is the press kind of misinterprets when hacks occur with Bitcoin versus Ethereum versus Mt. Gox versus some of the other spin-off technologies. In other words, Bitcoin gets the blame because that's the name associated. That's the main umbrella that people can identify with when it comes to cryptocurrencies and this technology in general. So it's easier to associate it with Bitcoin, but the press really doesn't do us any favors when they don't specifically talk about the particular technologies or the names of the companies that had something hacked. And
so let's kind of clarify that again, because I mean, technical level, high level, we're talking here.
Right.
So it's on a basic level, so everyone understands, Bitcoin is its own company and own entity.
Well, not company. It's a major difference, right?
Right. It's its own entity, right?
Exactly.
So what happens is it runs under its own. So what happens is when another financial entity comes out with the cryptocurrency,
exactly,
it is on side of it. It's not underneath.
Yeah. See, this is basically what we're dealing with. We're dealing with Bitcoin being an open source coding. Okay.
So what does that mean by open source? I mean,
Yeah, it basically means that the inventor, Satoshi Nakamoto, said, look, we don't want to hide anything from anyone. There's certain coding that makes Bitcoin what it is. In other words, when he created the white paper, he said, look, this is what we're doing here. This is what it looks like. And we want all developers, we want all hackers, we want all government agencies, all individuals to look at the source coding and see we don't have backdoors, we don't have things that are hidden, we don't have a secret agenda, a motive or something. This is the open source coding. It's a white paper. And
the reason why I'm asking that, Monty, is because a lot of people are probably watching this that are, we've got people that are just regular Joe Schmoes that are interested in using Bitcoin but don't understand kind of the high density, the high level of technology. So when we talk about open source, and the reason why I asked Monty that and just kind of clarify that, open source means that it is open to the public to be able to modify, look at, and have access to the code. Close, something that's not public, it might be a company or a corporation that has its proprietary coding that you won't be able to see. You won't be able to get access to. You actually have to compromise their systems to get access to the code. So when we talk about public domain, public code, it means available to anyone to be able to modify, access, to change it, to provide even more advice on how to make the code better on a public forum.
That's exactly what we're dealing with. We're dealing with nothing different than absolutely what you're describing. The reason why this is such an important concept, you guys, is because of that. Anyone can go into the source coding of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies unless someone comes up with a type that they don't want everyone to be able to look at. But the whole idea is to not hide what we're doing and to not put back doors and certain things that, where someone's money or privacy or whatever could get compromised. When developers get a hold of Bitcoin, for instance, some of the earliest evangelists, when they were working directly with Satoshi Nakamoto, they were given access to being part of the development process.
Right.
So now what we're doing is we're tweaking this along the way, and it's not a perfect technology because when all is said and done, it's a technology basically, and the developers right now are constantly going through the open source coding, and they're finding tweaks and bugs and different issues, and they're correcting it as we speak. But yeah, you could look at it. Anyone could look at it. When I was first introduced to Bitcoin, I looked at that white paper that I just put in there, written by the original elusive Satoshi Nakamoto, and he decided he's going to put this in the wild and release it so that everyone and their brother-in-law can analyze that theory or the reasoning behind Bitcoin. What problems is it addressing? Why is it important? What is wrong with the current payment systems? What is wrong with the current credit card processing networks? What is wrong with the monetary systems of today? and he incorporated into Bitcoin solutions to those problems. So yeah, when you get a chance, you guys take a look at the white paper and understand that developers are able to take a look at what makes Bitcoin. If they want to come up with their own version of cryptocurrency, like a lot of people have, then they can. But you do have to do your homework, because if you copy that coding and you make what your version of Bitcoin and your own cryptocurrency, you have to make it secure. You have to make it resilient and redundant. And right now, a lot of those offshoots are not as safe and secure and reliable. And a lot of them are going to come, a lot of them are going to go. But yeah, every day people are coming out with their own versions, and they're trying to improve upon this concept.
No, and that's true. I mean, what we've seen, and I'm sure everyone's seeing out there right now, is how this is evolving. Right? It's starting to become very mainstream that now companies are starting to look at, like I said, local stores, things that are looking at incorporating Bitcoin as another method of payment.
Exactly. Now this gets to let's get to why Bitcoin. Okay, because Brandon made a very good point when he talked about dollars not being backed by anything. Okay, so we just want to make sure you guys understand that 97% of the dollar's value has deteriorated, okay, since 1930s or something. I can't remember exactly where I got to find it. But when the Federal Reserve and the central bankers keep printing money, and we got a technical term called quantitative easing,
Mm-hmm.
and when the central bankers of the world do quantitative easing, that's just a fancy way of saying we're going to print more money to try and solve a problem. Okay, and when they print money out like that, that means that somebody's money is going to be worth less. And right now, that's exactly what's happening to our money. And our money, as our money becomes worth less, it takes more money, more hours where we're working more hours at our jobs to be able to afford the things that we were trying to buy yesterday or last month or something. But anyway, Bitcoin is trying to resolve that problem by saying, look, we're going to have mathematical algorithms that are always going to be publicly available to inspect, and using the blockchain, which is a public ledger, to publish these transactions. You, me, and anybody else could go into the blockchain. I think it's blockchain.org or something, a blockchain explorer, where you can see all these transactions. Okay, this brings accountability into this particular area now, where we didn't have it before. You can't go to the Federal Reserve and say, give me an audit so I can look at everything that you're doing. It's not that easy. So in the Bitcoin space, that's what we're doing. We're saying, look, yeah, this is entirely possible. It's not a big deal. We can account for units of value. We can make sure that we don't print out and have again counterfeiting and all of that, right? Because it's going to be such that you can find it.
So you talked about the blockchain. So I mean, what is that?
Okay, now the blockchain and Bitcoin really work like a hand in glove.
Right.
A lot of times when you talk about Bitcoin, you have to mention blockchain and vice versa. And what's a little bit confusing is the way they named the nomenclature behind Bitcoin. And it's like, is that a standalone entity? Is that the whole story, Bitcoin itself? Or how does blockchain fit in, and vice versa, right? So anyway, they picked the world's worst way of naming this concept because it doesn't really paint an accurate picture of what we're dealing with. Anyway, Bitcoin is almost like the cars that run on the freeway. If the freeway is blockchain, Bitcoin is the cars, the vehicles that run on top of the freeway. And without the cars on the freeway is useless. And without the highway system or the freeway, Bitcoin is useless. So what we're trying to make sure everyone understands is that the blockchain is going to be the method, the network by which I send and transact and do business and interact with the world. Okay, because if I give Brandon some Bitcoin right now, it's going to be recorded onto the blockchain. It's a public ledger that's permanent all the way from the very first transaction 6 or 7, 8 years ago, all the way to the present. All of this is recorded in a database and is publicly available. Okay, that's why we get this significant amount of accountability that we never had before. So anyway, the blockchain is simply a public ledger, and believe it or not, Wall Street is falling all over themselves to the tune of at least $1 billion right now, where every company in Silicon Valley and every bank, almost major bank on the planet, is taking a look at blockchain technology, because right now, this is what's going to make life difficult for the hackers. When you have a public ledger that's secure with the most robust encryption algorithms and protocols, it's going to be very, very difficult to compromise the information, the transactions, the identities. There's a whole lot that can be done with the blockchain, and at the same time, we'll be able to interact with each other and do all sorts of neat things.
So what we're talking about, and just to kind of recap, the Bitcoin really is just like the networks that we deal with right now. So we're talking about cloud, email networks. The blockchain is just another network of systems, computer servers that are out there that are storing data as your transactions climb through from point A to point B.
Yeah, the network itself is like the internet. You know, you can call it the next generation internet, if you will, because there's servers all over the planet, or nodes, as we like to call them, and the nodes create this redundancy. So this is what makes it very difficult, you guys, for government to disrupt this technology and keep it from spreading, because as long as there's one node, there's a copy of what we call the Genesis block. That means the original transactions all the way up to the present. As long as there's one node on the planet, and on my computer, your computer, or somewhere, then we can recreate this,
right?
These transactions, and start all over. So in the event of a nuclear war, for instance, the internet itself was designed to make sure that we reroute it, and there's servers and different things to make sure that it stayed up and running. Same thing with the Bitcoin network with nodes. It's the same concept. As long as there's one node and there's millions and millions, and the blockchain is basically this network, the name of the network, and it's redundant and resilient, and it's being put on every conceivable device, laptops, desktops, integrated into supposed to be integrated into the appliances that we use every day. So sometime in the future, your refrigerator is probably going to be a type of node that's going to help secure the network. So that creates more resiliency, more security, and it makes absolutely sure that the opportunity for compromise and breaches is even less than it was. I mean, even more than more stronger than it was yesterday. So,
which is good. Now, I mean, we're coming up on 10 minutes, and we've covered a lot of great information. I mean, I'm sure people are watching this right now are kind of going, "Oh my God!" Like, okay, so there's Bitcoin. It's a cryptocurrency. We understand that now. There's these different sites that we can go. We can use our current currency to go purchase Bitcoin, which is the new type of currency encryption. We know it travels over the blockchain for its data transfer. We know it's open source. So we know all this great information. I think, at this point, leaving people to understand that basic knowledge, that recap, really kind of gives them a good foundation. Now, is there anything else you want to add, Monty?
Let's see. As this relates to cybersecurity, which we didn't touch on as much, I just want you guys to understand that there's a number of entrepreneurs and startups that are taking a look at how do you use or leverage this technology in the security space. In the Internet of Things, for instance, we have certain issues regarding security and resiliency and all that, and a lot of times. What happens is we're trying to borrow or leverage this robust encryption scheme and this public ledger system. We're trying to leverage that so that in the future, your home appliances, your infrastructure of your your industries, whether it be power, utility, telecommunications, etc. Hopefully, we'll be able to get those databases put into the blockchain system, so that now information flowing through that system will be protected, and it'll be decentralized, so that at any given point in time, again, if there's a disruption, it doesn't impact so much in terms of us not getting access to data, or having a situation where someone's holding something ransom or something. So yeah, as we migrate this technology into a lot of different areas, and I was even looking at blockchain being used for SSL, the certificate that we use every day for shopping. That's going to be another area where we're going to see, hopefully your browser is going to be authenticating in such a way that it'll be almost impossible to have man in the middle attacks and sniffing and all that, because your browser will say, look, I need to go through 10 different checks. I need to check with the server, the certificate authority. I need to check with Brandon. I need to check with this and that and the other. And it'll be virtually impossible going forward to have compromises when we do e-commerce. So there's a lot of different areas that we need to look at. And I'm very optimistic that it's going to be it's going to be exciting times.
Oh, for sure. Most definitely. I mean, it's always going to evolve. And Monte, I mean, I really appreciate kind of you sharing this knowledge, this information, because what happens is at the end of the day, I mean, these are new technologies that we're still learning about. I mean, even coming from my background in IT security, right, it's still evolving. It's not something that is set it and forget it. It's evolving as it implements into the industry and how it works with the financial market, you know, and our day-to-day shopping in our lives. So there's a lot of things that we have to think about and be mindful of, is how all this is working together.
Exactly.
So thank you for just kind of taking the time today and going over that, because that's great for myself. That's great for the people that are watching this that might have heard of Bitcoin through conversation, but really don't understand what it is or how to use it. Now, since we've had this conversation, now they really kind of got a base of how it really works.
Yeah. And you guys, one thing I want to leave you with is, see, I'm a real big adamant fan of making sure that we understand that the monetary system has some issues with it, and it's causing a lot of people to suffer significantly in terms of being able to have the financial freedom and independence, right? And because, in my opinion, this is just me, the system is sort of like rigged or broken right now, as far as I can tell. We need something like this, okay? A lot of libertarians associated with Bitcoin for whatever reason, but I don't care if you're libertarian, conservative, whatever. Just understand that, look, we need a way of transacting with each other. We need a way of preserving value. We need a way of having accountability for financial and monetary systems of the world. And I'm reading a lot about central bankers every single day, and the problems they're having stimulating economic growth. So there's some things going on, and it seems like we need to step back and revamp the system and take a look at some alternatives. And as far as I can tell, this Bitcoin combined with the blockchain is going to prevent us with a very viable alternative. But it's only as good as the amount of participation that it gets from the people involved. So take a look at the articles, take a look at the videos, call Brandon as far as your, trying to understand how this can help your operations with the blockchain and SSLs and everything like that. Because going forward, I think we can accomplish a lot on the financial, monetary side, and in addition to making sure that this Internet of Things, the situation doesn't get out of hand, and all of that as far as security is concerned, cybersecurity, for instance.
Awesome. Well, what do you want to cover next week? I mean, we covered a lot. So what is Bitcoin? We've answered that question. Right. What do you want to cover for next week?
Oh, boy. Let's see. I don't know. What about that? What do you think about the bridging the physical and the cyber worlds? Do you think enough people understand that right now there's a merging of the different spaces where your online transitions into offline and
so cybersecurity in real life? You want to do that?
Yes, yes, basically the same idea, right? Exactly. Yeah, how the two are merging together, and I guess yeah, we need to see if we can find some way of conveying that message to people, probably.
Yeah, because I think that's one thing, like you said, it's having that real life kind of understanding of how it is affecting, your kids, your family, your house, your home, like everything.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Monty. Again, guys, next time, make sure you subscribe if you're watching this to our YouTube channel, to Monty and myself on Blab. And we'll see you next week, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Blab. Come out for, and add your 2 cents and any feedback that you have.
Cool. Okay, it was a pleasure, and you guys take care, and we'll see you next time. Oh yeah.